Chapter 1. More than 2 months passed before des Esseintes could bury himself in the silent repose of his Fontenay abode. He was obliged to go to Paris again, to scour the city in his search for the things he wanted to buy. What care he took, what meditations he surrendered himself to, before turning over his house to the upholsterers. He had long been a connoisseur in the sincerities and evasions of colour tones. In the days when he had entertained women at his home, he had created a boudoir where, amid daintily carved furniture of pale Japanese camphor wood, under a sort of pavilion of Indian rose-tinted satin, the flesh would colour delicately in the borrowed lights of the silk hangings. This room, each of whose sides was lined with mirrors that echoed each other all along the walls, reflecting, as far as the eye could reach, whole series of rose boudoirs, had been celebrated among the women, who loved to immerse their nudity in this bath of rosy warmth, made fragrant with the odour of mint emanating from the exotic wood of the furniture. Aside from the sensual delights for which he had designed this chamber, this painted atmosphere, which gave new colour to faces grown dull and withered by the use of ceruse and by nights of dissipation, there were other, more personal and perverse pleasures which he enjoyed in these languorous surroundings, pleasures which in some way stimulated memories of his past pains and dead troubles. As a souvenir of the hated days of his childhood, he had suspended from the ceiling a small silver-wired cage where a captive cricket sang, as if in the ashes of the chimneys of the Château de l'Orps. Listening to the sound he had so often heard before, he lived over again the silent evenings spent near his mother, the wretchedness of his suffering, repressed youth. And then, while he yielded to the voluptuousness of the woman he mechanically caressed, whose words or laughter tore him from his reverie and rudely recalled him to the moment, to the boudoir, to reality, a tumult arose in his soul, a need of avenging the sad years he had endured, a mad wish to sully the recollections of his family by shameful action, a furious desire to pant on cushions of flesh, to drain to their last dregs the most violent of carnal vices. On rainy autumnal days, when melancholy oppressed him, when a hatred of his home, the muddy yellow skies, the dirty grey clouds assailed him, he took refuge in this retreat, set the cage lightly in motion, and watched it endlessly reflected in the play of the mirrors, until it seemed to his dazed eyes that the cage no longer stirred, but that the boudoir reeled and turned, filling the house with a rose-coloured waltz. In the days when he had deemed it necessary to affect singularity, des Esseintes had designed marvellously strange furnishings, dividing his salon into a series of alcoves hung with varied tapestries, to relate, by a subtle analogy, by a vague harmony of joyous or sombre, delicate or barbaric colours, to the character of the Latin or French books he loved. And he would seclude himself in turn in the particular recess whose decor seemed best to correspond with the very essence of the work his caprice of the moment induced him to read. He had constructed, too, a lofty room intended for the reception of his tradesmen. Here they were ushered in and seated alongside each other in church pews, while from a pulpit he preached to them a sermon on dandyism, adjuring his bootmakers and tailors implicitly to obey his briefs in the matter of style, threatening them with pecuniary excommunication if they failed to follow to the letter the instructions contained in his monitories and bulls. He acquired the reputation of an eccentric, which he enhanced by wearing costumes of white velvet and gold-embroidered waistcoats, by inserting, in place of a cravat, a Parma bouquet in the opening of his shirt, by giving famous dinners to men of letters.